That feeling of agreement you sometimes have in watching your favorite gurus or YouTube videos by your fellow truth seekers is often inaccurate. Before we do anything else on this channel, I need to point out a common illusion in the creator-viewer dynamic. Yes, the one we're in now. Otherwise, everything I say going forward will be misleading at best. A sort of half-lie. And I'm not going to give you answers here, I'm going to show you the shape of how answers form. The problem is that the more vaguely I speak, the more room for agreement I create between you and me. It's hard to disagree with someone who speaks in broad truths because they've made it so. They haven't revealed where they specifically diverge from you. So, in a way, I'm going to sacrifice myself here with brutal honesty, using the idea you've probably heard before, that everything is one. It's a very common belief amongst my psychonaut audience on trip tips. You might even be a believer yourself. I'm going to use this as an example because if you're stroking your chin or your guru's chin in agreement that yes, we're all one, the appearance is that we're on the same page, even if we slightly disagree on what that actually means. But are we? You can imagine a guru saying we're all one to a group who all nod in agreement, but this agreement is appearance, not reality. In reality, they're actually agreeing with themselves, not the guru, because the guru never actually revealed much to disagree with. So for this video, I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm also going to nod in agreement with oneness as a thought experiment, but then give you my raw maximal interpretation that doesn't hold back. So much so that it's not going to sound like the oneness we agreed on at all, and yet it's still going to be a literal interpretation of oneness. The complexity of this idea doesn't justify me simplifying it so much that you don't get what I mean and end up with a false map, a half-truth, just so that we can both pretend to agree with each other. I'd rather you disagree with me but understand than agree with me and misunderstand. You deserve that realness if you want it, and if you're watching this, I can only assume you're not looking for easy answers or validation. Once we see how a mission gives you a false sense of connection, then we can explore the more important and useful but difficult parts of the half-truth trap. A trap that ultimately causes a lot of the suffering we gain the choice to opt out of by knowing how this concept works. So peeling back the layers of oneness now, also called non-duality or other names, whilst these terms can mean different things academically, the core idea we're going to explore is that everything is not two, which can also mean different things. So let's cut through that. For this video, when I say not two, I really mean it literally, which I'll explain in a sec, but if you want some more formal arguments, I've linked them for free below the video as well. For this video, I'm going to take the view that every duality, no matter the category, hot, cold, big, small, you, not you, is ultimately conjoined as a unity. For one side of any duality to exist, the other side must also coexist, and since they're literally included in each other's definitions, they're interconnected and therefore one. For example, up is literally defined as not down, and down is defined as not up. If it's impossible to find such thing as upness, then we're never going to find a down direction either. From this perspective, dualities are these complementary opposites. They can't come individually in some absolutely ultimate way. They ultimately come as a pair, and to me, oneness is the idea that these pairs are ultimately one unified whole. And this doesn't just apply to abstractions. Think about yourself. How many things are you? You could say you're a certain amount of cells, or an even larger amount of atoms, or you're a much smaller number of organs, or just a brain and a body pair. But ultimately, to be you to begin with, you have to be one thing as well. It's like a tree with many branches. Each of the branches is distinct, but they're all still the tree. Non-duality / oneness argues that existence itself is like this tree. Everything separate in all of reality is at the deepest level a branch, ultimately made of the same substance from the same source, as if reality is like a cloth where you can cut every shape into it, but still ultimately recognize that the patterns we make out of the cloth doesn't change the underlying fact that the cloth itself is still one thing. It's the first common ancestor. If they even get this far, this is where most gurus stop, so let's continue. If everything is truly one and every duality is truly just a non-duality in disguise, that means all distinctions have to be collapsible, and this is where it starts to get really weird. It means that even the dualities of oneness and manyness, duality and non-duality, Distinction and sameness must all therefore be one and interconnected. The boundary between duality and non-duality must be both dual and non-dual. Now, I know it might feel like we're about to play a clever word game here, but consider that treating a claim about the ultimate nature of reality with precise logical seriousness isn't a game, it's the only way to truly honor the claim. If everything is truly one with no exceptions, we can't just dismiss exceptions as a word game. So from this perspective, everything being one and its opposite, not oneness, would itself also be one and the same. So one and the same that it's also different, which means everything must also not be one. If you disagree, then what you'd be saying is that not every duality collapses, therefore not everything is one. So even in trying to loophole around this, you still end up agreeing with me that everything isn't one. Or do you? No. That's just another half-truth. If you disagree that every duality collapses, you must believe that some dualities are not fundamental, which means you conclude everything is not one, and I also concluded that everything is not one. So how do we disagree? The answer is that I concluded it via the ultimate affirmation of oneness, whereas someone could disagree and conclude it from a complete rejection of oneness. Not in the way I technically reject oneness here, a different type of rejection. Notice what just happened. We arrived at the exact same sentence, same words, in the same order, everything is not one. But we'd be using those words to mean two completely different things. This is the trap, an illusion of agreement masking a deep fundamental disagreement, only revealed by talking about it. By now, you probably see the logic. The issue is that if I had started the video by saying everything isn't one, most believers of oneness would disagree. Yet, here's the twist. That's exactly what I said. I literally said that when I said I'll nod in agreement to oneness. I just didn't add enough nuance for you to understand that's what I meant by oneness. I meant so much oneness that oneness and manyness are themselves a pair of ways to communicate oneness. But interpretation-wise, it's not the same idea. If I'd been vague, anyone who disagrees with me now, knowing what I meant, didn't change from agreeing to disagreeing. They always disagreed, just without knowing it. They would have been trapped in a half-truth because my vagueness would have marketed the half-truth as more than that. And there's an even bigger reason to care. This might seem quite abstract still, but let's go a bit deeper and explore how the spell of the half-truth directly causes avoidable suffering. It's a shame to have such a beautiful idea, but to only see what is bad about it. This is a pretty common occurrence. There's even a name commonly used for this stuff called dark night of the soul. People come to believe in oneness every day, and with that come to believe life is meaningless, or a number of other labels they take as negative. Let's use one that's a direct logical consequence of oneness/non-duality. Eternal loneliness. The idea is that if everything is one, and we're all one consciousness, there's no one but you. Not you, the human watching this, you, the awareness that experiences every awareness, even if in this case, it's one at a time. After all, self and other collapse as a duality as well. So many people every day feel alone after having this thought, even though that emotion is such a half-truth. So let's really think about it. Does oneness just mean complete loneliness, or does it also mean complete socialization? After all, every perspective comes together and unifies. In the exact same way that that's lonely, it's also completely lacking in loneliness. Everything is ultimately shared. To feel bad about the loneliness is to fixate on the consequences of the half-truth, not realizing the other half makes up for those same consequences. We're going to get to the trippy part soon, but I really need to hammer in this point because it could be life-changing for you. If oneness also implies absolute socialization, just like it implies absolute loneliness, sure, from the socialization perspective, everything is connected and integrated together, so you might think that this is the good side of the duality. But actually, wouldn't that mean you have zero privacy? If everything is shared, nothing is really just yours. Do you see how someone could also fixate on this as a negative as well? It's not really that one side of the duality is good and the other is bad. There's bad and good in both sides, and what we focus on and fixate is going to be what we feel. The reason increasing consciousness/awareness can feel like suffering, but also can feel like a more neutral Zen peace, or even blissful happiness is because it's not a process of convergence, it's a divergence. There's more potential in a bigger set. If awareness grows in this one lopsided direction, in this disproportional way, where we fixate on the positive or negative perceptions of the half-truths we expand into, never contextualizing the other side, that's when we tend to see the emotional tilt one way or the other. You can fixate that there's no one else and there's nothing to be embarrassed about and feel good, or you could fixate on how lonely it is and feel bad. You could fixate that there's everyone else and so fixate that there's so many others that you'll never run out and have endless novelty and feel good, or you could fixate on how your entire being is naked to everyone else and feel exposed and feel bad. And the coolest part is that this whole structure can be modeled like a fractal, meaning we can solve negativity in so many unique ways. Let me walk you through it. If oneness, therefore complete loneliness, therefore existential depression, let's take that as the problem. We can fix this by recognizing that oneness can mean not oneness and therefore ending the chain there, or we could not recognize that but recognize that oneness also implies complete socialization/unity, ending the chain there, or we could miss both of those and recognize that complete loneliness has its own positive duality, therefore ending the chain there. Hell, we could even recontextualize the existential depression itself to have a positive side if we really tried. As a basic example here, and I'm just going to pick random options because we're pretty spoiled for choice, here's the duality of up and down. Unify it into a both, now we have verticality as the both, and we can have the horizontal direction as the neither. Unify the both and neither for verticality and horizontality, and now we have a new higher order both, and we can have a third dimension as the neither, and so on. If everything is really one, there may always be a neither to a both, even for the duality of both and neither. For this reason, I believe we can't escape the half-truth trap. Obviously, that seems contradictory because the very statement, we can't escape the half-truth trap, is of course a half-truth. It has to be. That's kind of the point, because this isn't a contradiction that breaks the trap, it's another layer of that same trap, a demonstration of how it continues, not an escape. Though the trap you can escape is thinking you've reached the end of the line where neitherness becomes definitely impossible, and you can know that. It's easy to think that because you've accounted for both sides, you've accounted for all sides, but that can make suffering existential, like there's no way out. The solution is that the higher order bothness that accounts for the miss neither wasn't accounted for. Being a human is an adventure of spiraling through these half-truth sides and having these emotional experiences, so at the end of the day, who really knows what's best? No matter how enlightened I've become, I've always had new novel details and nuances of the fractal to face. If your goal right now is to reduce the suffering that comes from being emotionally thrown around by these half-truths, then you should be seeing by now how to navigate the waters, or at least that it's possible. It seems that there's always something more than we can see, so we might never truly know for sure what's going on, but just recognizing that we don't know and that that's okay already kind of puts us in that Zen neutral state. Not that there's anything wrong with flavor in life. Go feel good if you want. It's not unaligned with what I've said here, and since most people don't want to feel bad, I'll throw this advice out here too. If existentially not knowing or this neutrality I've presented feels negative to you and you don't want that, you're still being selective with the half-truth interpretations we make without recognizing that we don't actually have the full truth to have a conclusion to begin with. That negative feeling from existential uncertainty is literally a pretending to have uncertainty while feeling certain that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that just knowing that guarantees breaking out of bad emotions, of course. I've suffered a lot too. But sometimes, for those of us that need to hear this, all you need is for someone to tell you that you're role-playing. Most people's uncertainty is a role-play. My own uncertainty is a roleplay. Who can blame us? At the end of the day, we can only try. We're always stuck in these half-truths, and every half-truth is by definition ignorant to the other side, and that's where this thinking is genuinely hard. There's no need to downplay it. After all, everything I've said in this video is a half-truth. There's no truly avoiding vagueness because there's always more detail that could be added. That's what fractals are. So given that never-ending complexity, we can't expect our highest potential from trying to figure this out alone, not in the oneness way, but for some reason not enough of us are thinking about how and where to walk, and yet we're all walking. Those of us who are thinking about it, we need to team up. I've worked really hard thinking about this, and as a result, I've spent a long time now building the right space for us to combine our half-truths together and learn as much as we can from each other in a genuinely self-aware way. I'll talk more about this in future videos, but if you're interested in straight up becoming wiser, we now have a community built from the ground up for this exact purpose. You can join using the link below, and I'll see you there.